first thing I wanted to talk about is when I first opened this up, these things were not loaded. So they gives you the color bars, and it says the media is not available. So I just wanted to show you one way you can deal with that. Like, see, there's a lot of stuff in this project. And so where is this item located? So if I wanted to, if this one was, showing me the color bar, so it's not available and I need to reload it, how do I find where it is up in here? So then I can go reload it. So it's simply, you right click on it and you can go here and reveal in, you can do reveal in Finder because it's already linked. It knows where it is, but if it doesn't know where it is, then you can reveal the source in project. And then it opens it up and it shows you where it is in the project. And then you could go replace, and then you'd go to your desktop and, or, your external drives or whatever, and find it. And you can search by the name. For example, this one is missing, and I could go in here, and I actually was not able to find it. I tried earlier, but when you come in here, you could type in the name and search. Like I've got an external drive and cloud and all those things. If it can find it, then it'll show up here. But that particular one was not able to be located, but the others did. All these were found. So I think that's really handy. So it's just right click, reveal in source, in project. So that's handy. Another thing, now, some of you have already run into this problem. Once you start getting into more complicated animations, you may have this issue where it says you don't have enough cache or something like that. And so I want to be sure you understood what to do about that. And I think the best solution is to have an external drive. I've got a passport drive on here, and you go to preferences, media disk cache, and then you choose a folder for your cache. So I would go to my passport, and I created a folder called cache. And so I select that one. And then you can empty the disk cache. So because the problem is your computer caches a lot of the stuff you've been working on, and that eats up your RAM. And so you can't get anything done if it uses up all the RAM. So clear it out. And then again, make one for media cache, and that's also I've got on the external and right here, and I'll choose that one. And then it wants to delete the database. Yes. And I mean, you could do this. I don't think this one's as important, but you could do the same thing with this one. And I'll just put it in here, and it'll make a folder, I think, and clean the data. Okay, so that's going to help a lot if you're having those problems. I have to do that because I'm working on an old laptop, and it's full of stuff, and I've got all kinds of files and applications, and I keep trying to clean it out, but it always keeps running out of room. So I have problems with After Effects and with Photoshop, with everything. So I have to use the external drive in both Photoshop as well as After Effects. A couple of other things I wanted to show you. Now, I noticed a lot of you in your midterm projects, you ended up like this with a ton, and many of you had even more than this, of layers. And that can be a little bit, cumbersome to work with and to scroll through. So when you're not using certain layers, what you can do is you can hide them, and it's called shy. You shy them. So you see here, this is the shy right here, this button. It's supposed to be a little guy. And you click on that. So this is now, it's now ready to be hidden. So if I select them all and then I click on this button, they all disappear. You need to know this as well, because if you're working in studios, like a freelance situation, sometimes you might open up a project and there's a ton of animation in it, but you can't see it. There's nothing in here. Where is all this animation happening? Well, it's probably been shy. So this when you click and then everything gets revealed again. So it just makes your managing a million layers a lot easier. So you can work kind of like having folders in Photoshop where you just close them all up and then only work on those particular layers that you need. So that one I think is very handy.
Oh, thank you for that. It was I noticed like I had a problem with that too. So organizing
Okay.
it, I noticed arranging it could be kind of difficult with those many layers.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Some of you guys had tons of layers, and so yeah, sorry I didn't mention that earlier, but now you know. So another thing is for rendering. Sometimes rendering gets really slow, and one thing you can do is you can lower the resolution right here. So mine's already at half. Sometimes you need to go down more, like to even a quarter or a third, particularly with audio. If you want to hear the audio, After Effects does not handle audio well at all. So sometimes by lowering that resolution and also shortening your work area. So then it's only going to be rendering this area. That will also help it to render faster. You don't really, sometimes you need it at full just to see what the thing's looking like. But then when you actually want to play the preview, you almost always have to go to half or less. This does not affect the output. So when you go to render your output, you will choose, of course, full and best for all of your settings. Okay, so that should be helpful. Now, another thing I wanted to show you, is region of interest. That's this button here. And with this is sort of the same thing. Like you've got a complicated animation, but you only want to see what's happening in one little area. You don't need to render this whole HD thing. You can just go like this, and it'll only render that area. And so that can be a real time saver because rendering the whole thing could take forever, but just rendering this so you can see what's happening, that could be very helpful. And yeah, I can't remember how to get out of it once I get into it. Okay, go away. No, come back. I didn't want that to go away. There we go. I used Option, clicked on it, and that got rid of it. Okay. Another thing I wanted to show you. Well, let me do that one in a minute. Shy layers. Okay, green screen. I wanted to talk to you about Silhouette Alpha. So I've imported a project here, and let's get into this one. Into here, actually. So I've just created these shapes. I'll make this normal. So here's what I've got. I've just got a bunch of shapes all stacked up on top of each other, and I've got this one circle that scales up, goes full screen. This can be very handy in here. So for mode, we have all of our usual that we're familiar with, but down here we've got some interesting ones. And this one is Silhouette Alpha. When you do Silhouette Alpha, this layer is going to punch a hole through everything below it. And it'll do something like this. Now I have got this button here. This toggles the background of the comp on and off. So this comp, in the comp settings, Command K, it's got a black background, but there is no layer really in there. There's no color solid in there. And so if you wanted to, you could make an alpha channel. And this toggles the alpha on and off. What do they call it? It says toggle. Oh, that's not the one. Yeah, that's the one. This one. So you could render this out. If you rendered it out with an alpha, this area would be transparent. And so you can see what that's going to look like. Now, if we take this into another comp, so I brought it in here. Here's my Silhouette Alpha that I just created. And if I scrub through this, you see what's happening? It's punched a hole through everything in that comp, and it's now revealing the layers below it in this comp. So you need to take this and nest it inside another comp, because you can't do like the background with the type in it in the Silhouette Alpha, because the Silhouette Alpha is going to punch a hole through everything. So there are other ways. We could have just used a mask on this in this case and scaled the mask up. But there are times when the Silhouette Alpha has been very, very useful to me. There are other options in here, like there's the Stencil Alpha, which will do the opposite. So these things are good to know about. And Luma is based on luminosity. So that would be based on like the grayscale values. I haven't been able to use that as much, but I think there could be some interesting possibilities using that as well. So those are some things I wanted to be aware of. And then it's really important to be able to reduce a project, because like say this project's got a ton of stuff in it. But what if I just wanted this render the cube? If I just wanted this one and the elements that belong to it, and I wanted to get rid of everything else. So what I could do is, I could go through and, delete everything, but that's a real pain. So what you can do is you can select this one, and then you can go to File, Dependencies, Reduce Project. First of all, there's a couple in here that are really useful. Remove unused footage. So that's one thing. Anything that's not being used, it will get rid of. So this 49 footage items it got rid of. And then you can come up here and you can go to Dependencies and Reduce Project. And you see it got rid of all of that stuff. 93 items it got rid of. And then of course, you'd want to do a save as. You wouldn't want to save on top of this one, because that would, you might want all that stuff later. So you do a save as and then rename it. So that is huge. That's really very helpful. Another one is Purge. So Purge is just a way to free up disk space and memory. So we did the external drive for our cache and everything, but also this will also help, particularly if you don't have the external drive and things get sluggish. You could go here and yeah, I think so. So that's going to get rid of all the stuff that's been in cache. So hopefully everything's still good. Okay. Okay. Now I want you guys to download some stuff. Before we go into the demos, there's a short demo on green screen that I want to just talk about. And Ming isn't big on doing green screen in the first term or motion design one, but I have found some students need it and would like to use it. So I think it's something you should at least know about. So I'd like you to go into our class folder today. Let me see, I'll get to it. I've got it open. Let me share. I'll get to it here in a second. There's actually a lot of stuff that I'd like you to download. So here we are. So here's the footage items for green screen. So I would like you to download this. Here's footage items for True Detective. This could take a few minutes. So download this. We'll talk about green screens, and then we'll take a break, I think, and you can download this stuff because this will take a little while. Here's our AE projects. So you're gonna have to reconnect everything. We have I've already created, so you can reverse engineer if you want to, rotating cube and True Detective. And there are a bunch of handouts that I think you at some point you should download. We have one on green screen. The making a 3D cube, this is just the steps written out so that you could use them now to help you follow along with me. But there is a recorded tutorial on this one. I haven't recorded the tutorial on the True Detective, and I don't know, I could probably find the link to the original somewhere, but this is the steps, and there's a lot of them. This one's got a lot of steps, but it's interesting. There's a lot of interesting things to do. So right now, please download the green screen items, and we'll work on that here in a minute. Now you have to download the New York library. I've got it in here. Okay, once you get those downloaded, let's create a new project. And we don't have, this is only going to have 2 files in it, so maybe we don't need to worry about organizing our project folder. But then bring in the New York Library and Petals. Petals is up at 6 on my computer.
Professor, we're looking at your .ed screen.
Okay, sorry, I'll share my After Effects project here in just a second. Okay. So let's start by taking New York City Library and just dragging it to the new comp button. So this will create a comp that's exactly the same size as the footage. And then we can bring Petals in on top of it. So the Petals were shot against the green screen. And so we want to knock out the green screen. And by the way, I'll talk in a minute about shooting green screen and how it should be done so that this works as easily as possible. But all we have to do in this case, this one's got a pretty good green screen. So this is under, we want to knock it out. So it's called key. We want to key out the green. So go to Effect, go to Keying, and we're going to use Key Light. And this is an amazing plugin that now comes with After Effects. I'll go into my effects control. And if the green screen is good, all you have to do is take the eyedropper from green screen color, click on, a pretty even representative, and you see how it knocks it out. And so now we've got all these beautiful petals. Now, if we go in there, let's turn off New York Library for a moment and let's look at the petals. So they have a very pixelated edge. So we can do a little bit of a blur. So a lot of the stuff is in here under Screen Map. Also, we can look here at under View. We could look at Source. We could look at the Alpha channel. We could look at the Screen Map. This is usually the most useful because it puts it into, like black and white stencil. And I just want to soften the screen a little bit to get rid of the pixels, the pixelated edge, just to make it a little bit softer. Right here. And if there was a lot of green, there are other features in here like enable color correction, or in this case, edge color correction or edge color suppression. So some of the challenges with green screen is if it's not shot correctly, then the green can spill in onto your subject, if it's a person, or in this case, onto the petals. And you might have some green around the edges, or it could be mixed green with the color of your footage. So it doesn't get completely keyed out. So in those cases, you could use something like color suppression, and you choose the color that you want to suppress, and that helps get rid of it. There's there's a lot in here. We'll look at some more later. And if anybody's really interested in a whole lesson on it, I've got tons of green screen footage that we could play around with. Green screen this makes it look really easy. And it can be if you've shot it correctly. But where there's problems with people, I'll tell you, is things like denim. It's in the fabric a lot of times, and sometimes hair. But denim fabric isn't a solid color. Denim fabric is really a combination of blue and with a lot of white in it, a lot of white threads in denim. And that will tend to vibrate, to chatter on the edges. And that's always challenging, to say the least, to get rid of the chattering edges. And there are third-party plugins to reduce the chatter, and there's all kinds of things we can do. But I don't think that's going to be an issue for you guys right now. So I'm going to go back to final results here. Turn on my New York City Public Library, and looks pretty nice. So I'm going to open up a handout on shooting green screen. Hopefully. Here's one. Okay, let me share the screen. I think this one's shared. Let's share it. Yeah, I'll share this one. Okay, so the goal when shooting with a green screen, first of all, does anybody know why we shoot with green? It's either green or blue screen or green screen. Does anybody know why? It's because of skin tones, because most people don't have green or blue in their skin tones, and you don't want your subject to disappear when you do the key. So that's the main reason. It has to do with skin tone. So when shooting with green screen, the goal is to create an evenly lit screen with as narrow a color range as possible and well-lit subject that has a light green spill on him, or as little green spill as possible. So ideally you should be, they say you should be like 12 feet. So you could have a green screen that's made out of fabric, for example. I've got a big giant green screen that is cloth. The problem with it is, when you unless you've got a studio where you can leave it out, you got to fold it up and put it away, and then it gets wrinkled. So then when you set it up, you've got to get rid of the wrinkles, because the wrinkles are really annoying when you're trying to do a key, because they don't key well. So it's got to be perfectly flat as possible and as well evenly lit as possible. And it's not so much that you need a bright green, you just need an even green. That's the desire. And you want the subject away from the screen itself enough so that you could light the subject. So you do a key light, you do a light on the subject, a main light, and then you may have a backlight and then a top down light. So usually there's like a 3-point lighting system. But then you also need lights on the green screen. So the green screen itself needs to be well lit, and then you'd light your subject as well. So the lighting is a bit tricky. It's not really tricky. It's just that you need to spend some time with it, and you need lights, and you need some space to work. Although, a lot of people who do interviews, they're going to interview some CEO somewhere and fly across the country and, just in and out in 15 minutes. Well, they'll have these pop-up ones, like the things you'd use on the dashboard of your car. They have green screens like that, and they'll just pop up, big enough to be behind the person. And they'll just stick it on like a light stand or something, and shoot their video, and it works, it works really well. It's different if you need a full body and stuff. That's when it becomes more challenging. If you're just going to do like, shoulder and head, then it's not such a big deal. But anyway, you want to use a matte material, and there's a lot of them. They have them at Art Center that you can rent as well. Get the wrinkles out, light the screen more for hue, not just to make it bright. Light the screen as evenly as possible. have the subject. Now, this is if you have enough space. This is ideal, but one thing I did that was problematic on this video that I was shooting was I had the green screen coming down and then coming across the floor because I wanted them to be in a completely different environment. I didn't want to have to deal with the floor. I wanted to have a whole different environment. I wanted them head to toe in a new environment. So that meant I had to have them standing on the green. And that was challenging because I would get green spill up on their body from the floor. So that was a little bit tricky. And then light the subject. Turn the lights off on the screen when lighting the subject. Light on the subject should be stronger than the light on the screen. You want to create a value difference between the subject and the background. Ideally, the subject would be 2 stops lighter than the green screen. Consider what background you plan to put the subject against. It's often more interesting to give the subject a stronger light on one side than the other, in which case you need to consider the light source in the final composition. So if you're going to put them in a background, like say you're going to put them in an architectural background, some kind of a cool building, you need to have the lighting on your subject match the lighting in your background in order for it to look, realistic and believable. Okay, I see a chat here. What's somebody saying? Yes, that's good. Okay. All right, so that's basically it on green screen. We're going to use green screen in a moment, in a few moments, when we start on the next tutorial doing the True Detective. Let me play again the True Detective, the real True Detective intro for season 1. So let's see, that's part of the title. I'll share my screen here in a second. And then we'll take our breath. Season 1. Here it is. Let me share the screen. I don't know if you can see it or not. I wasn't sure. So we're going to do a very simplified version of this sort of double exposure thing.
From the dusty mesa, her looming shadow grows, hidden in the branches of the poison creosote. She twines her spines up slowly.
So this is an example actually of music that has lyrics, but no kinetic typography, just the credits and so forth.
Towards the boiling sun, and when I touched her skin, my fingers ran with blood. When the last light warms the rocks and the rattlesnakes unfold,
Mountain cats will come to drag away the bones.
then runs with me forever across the silent sand, and the stars will be your eyes, and the wind will be my hand.
Okay, let's take a break. Let's take 25 minutes, and then we'll get started on our tutorial. And I'm going to pause the recording, so if somebody would remind me when we start again, I'd appreciate it. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up the True Detective After Effects project. Let me share my screen. and we'll recreate it. Okay, Chris. Okay, so this is basically what we're going to be doing. Pretty cool. So we're going to recreate this, and I'll walk you all through it. So have you guys all got it open and reconnected all your footage, or do you need a little more time? Give me a thumbs up if you're ready to go. Okay, most of you are ready, it looks like. Jade, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. All right, so let's go. So we're going to start by creating a comp. So let's create a new comp. We are usually HD. 3 seconds should be fine. We're going to use a black background, and let's rename this. So I'll just name it TD for True Detective. True Detective. I see I did DT in the previous version, but so True Detective 2 here. Okay, and then we're going to bring the trees in. Trees footage. It's a little video. And duplicate the trees. Command D. Okay, then we're going to scale the top one. This is going to be creating a parallax effect. So scale the top one. You're going to have to unlink the two properties here, and we're going to scale it 155 by 100. So it's going to be much more narrow and long. And then we're going to move it to a position. So hit P to a position of 1190 and 680. And set a keyframe for position. And then we're going to scale the bottom one. It'll be 140, 140. Okay, then we're going to use curves and levels to modify the image. So we want to get rid of the edge across the top here. So you can't see it. So on the top one, I'm going to go to Effect, Color Correction, Curves. And then in the curve effects controls, I'm going to push the contrast and darken it. This. Oh, the top one, by the way, I was wondering what was going on. The top one is supposed to be on multiply. That's what I missed. And that makes a difference. Then we have to get rid of that top. There, that's what it should look like, something like that. You could also go into blue and remove a little bit of the blue if you want. We want this to be on the kind of sepia side. And then on the lower on the second layer of trees, we're going to go into color correction. You can use curves or layers. I just wanted to use different ones to get experience with them. So I'm going to go to levels and just increase the contrast. And then we're going to go to the end of the comp. And then we're going to animate the position of the top one. And so for position, we're going to move then to 919. So this is our little parallax effect. Kind of cool. Okay, then we need to pre-comp this and move the pre-comp into the pre-comp folder. So I'm going to select both of these, Command-Shift-C, move all of the attributes, call it trees pre-comp 2. Okay, and then in your project, move that one out of the renders folder and into the pre-comps folder. If I start going too fast, you need more time, just speak up, let me know. The next part is Aaron. This is where the majority of our work is going to be done. It gets a little bit confusing, so I'll try to go slowly here. We need to bring Aaron in. And then we're going to use key light to knock out the green. So effects, key light, effects controls, choose screen color, knock it out. Now what I want to do is go into the screen matte. So under view, screen matte, so we look at it in black and white. We want to get rid of all of this background. So we want the background to go black and the foreground to go white. So we'll do that under screen matte. In here, screen matte, you take clip black, just push that to the right until the black area is completely black. And then on the white, clip white, go to the left until it's completely white. Then you can go back to final results. We got to get rid of this piece of junk back here. So this was where the green screen was. This is the background, the studio, and there's one of the lights hanging out. So we're just going to take the pen and we're going to create what's called a garbage mat. So garbage mat is just a very loose mat that gets rid of junk in the background. So what we have to do is go into our layer and into our mask and invert the mask. And now we're where we want to be. Then we're going to take the click on the trees pre-comp, and we're going to create an alpha map. And now we have the trees inside Aaron silhouette. Okay, then we're going to duplicate Aaron. Turn the eyeball on so we can see Aaron again. Now we're going to add a color correction tint. And if you just add a tint and you don't modify these colors, this is actually an extremely useful effect. I use it quite a lot. If you just add the tint and you don't modify anything, it just makes it in basically to grayscale or neutral. It's a little grayscale, sometimes a little on the warm side. We could make it a little bit warmer if we want. We're going to do that in a little bit, but I think right now this is fine. And then we're going to add curves. You can add curves or levels, either one. So I'm going to affect color, correction, curves. And now we want to just clean up Aaron a little bit. We do want to keep the middle values, but we want to increase the contrast slightly. Maybe something like that. Now we might want to come back and change this a little bit later. Let's rename this layer Aaron Gradient. And you can turn off the eyeball and put this one at the bottom of the stack. We're going to use it to create a displacement map. We do, for this to work properly, we should pre-comp Aaron, even though it's just one layer, it's still going to work better for the displacement map if we pre-comp. So I'm going to Aaron gradient pre-comp. Okay, and then let's just stay organized. So I'll take Aaron gradient pre-comp and drag it into the pre-comps folder. Okay, then back to our trees. And under effect, distort, displacement map. And then in the effects control, under displacement map layer, we want to use Aaron gradient. And then for horizontal displacement, we're going to use luminance. And vertical, we're going to use luminance. So basically what that's going to do is it's going to use his features to distort the trees a little bit. So we feel like we could see his face a little bit in the trees. Now I want to show you a trick here. This is sort of interesting, and you can use this in many other situations. So I'm going back into Aaron gradient here. Click on this, go into the effects control. Oh, wait a minute, that's not the one I want, sorry. I wanted to go back into here. Yeah, that is what I want to do. But then, what happened to my effects on Aaron? I don't know. I missed something here, so I'm going to come back in here and add my curves. This was supposed to be tinted and everything. Something I messed up here. Let me look at my notes for a second. Oh, you know what I did when I pre-comped? I didn't move everything over, I bet. Let me look back at that. I'm going to go backwards a minute. This would be before I pre-comp him. There's where all my stuff is. And then I pre-comped. This was where my mistake was. So this was a good lesson for you guys. I should have moved everything into the pre-comp. That's why it wasn't there when I went back. And I'll move that one in. Okay, now here's what I wanted to show you. I'm in this main comp. I'm going to go back into Aaron for a minute and into the effects. And I'm going to lock the effects in here. And then I can go back into my main comp. And it's still going to keep the effects for Aaron available. So I can come in here and I can modify this more, you know, to see if I can get a little bit more of a definition of his face as it goes through the trees. So it's just a handy way to be able to work on the effects on another layer in another comp, you know, at the same time you're in your final main comp. I'm not seeing a heck of a lot of difference. I could try a different effect. Maybe I'll try the levels, see if that works any better. Not seeing much difference there either. Well, I'll go with that. Then we have to unlock it. And okay, now we're going to duplicate Aaron yet again. So Command D, turn on the eyeball, and we're going to go into key light. And this time we're going to go into the screen mat. And we're going to blur the map a lot. So it's under screen softness. We're going to blur this to like 209. And we're going to leave it that way. We're going to leave it in screen mat. And then we're going to pre-compose this. And we'll call this edge mat. So I'm going to pre-compose this, move everything in, and let's call this edge mat. I'll do edge mat 2. Say okay. Again, we should move the pre-comp edge mat into the pre-comp folder just to stay organized. And then okay, so then we duplicate, turn on the eyeball, pre-comp. Okay, then we're going to use duplicate Aaron, turn on the eyeball, use the pre-comp you just made to invert. Okay, so we're going to duplicate Aaron again. Turn on the eyeball. The pre-comp is above, and we're going to use this as a lumen. Let's see, lumen mat. And actually, I think I did should be the other way around. Sorry. This should be the lumen mat like this. That's the way it should be set up. Because what we're trying to achieve here is just see a little bit of Aaron face as he's turning around. I'm actually seeing more of him than I actually want to. So I'm going to come back in here and maybe turn that one off for a minute. Did I not move everything? Yeah, I did. Okay. Screen that. Might soften this. I mean, make this a little less blurry so they don't see quite so much of his face. Go back in here. Slightly better. Okay. Okay, then on Aaron, I'm going to add a hue saturation. And reduce the saturation a little bit, just to make him a little less colorful. And then I'll add also a curves. Increase the contrast a little bit. He's showing up more than he should on mine. I'll go back to the other one and see how it's looking. It's kind of cool. It's showing up a little bit too much. So I can modify the opacity here and turn him down a little bit. So this is one way. I didn't have to do this before, so I've done the steps a little differently somehow, but I sort of like being able to adjust that so I can see more or less of him. Also, something I'm looking at here that I'm not crazy about is the trees, have the white snow at the bottom. So we could go back into the trees and just lower them down a little bit. I'll go into the trees, select all my trees, and position. This is just something I've decided I'd like to do. I'll drop that down there and then jump back into here. It feels a little bit cleaner. Okay, now we're going to get started on the background. So no, we got a little yeah, we got we're in the background now. So Command Y can get a solid and make it kind of a sepia color. Something like that. Okay, and then put it at the bottom. And then I want to add a number of things, doing different things. Now with the trees, to make them more neutral, we could add a tint. And to make them even warmer, we could take the black and like, you could double click on it. And you could make it a little bit of a sepia color for the trees if you wanted to. They need to be dark, but kind of nice to have them in the same color range. Okay, then I'm going to add grunge. So I've got a Photoshop file here with grunge. I'm going to put that on multiply and reduce the opacity. I don't want it to be quite so strong. And I don't want it to just sit there. So I'm going to scale it. So at the beginning, I'll have a scale of 100. I'll have it at 100, set a keyframe. And then at the end, I'm going to move it up to 120. So I just have a little bit of a movement on that. And then we've got some other things in here that we can play with. We've got the dust. I'm going to put this above the grunge. And then we have a flare. And both of these will need to be set on blend modes of add. So that it's a lot more subtle with them on add. You don't really see much of the lens flare until you get near the end, and then it's really nice. Then I want to darken the whole thing and kind of focus our attention more in the center. So I'm going to add an adjustment layer at the top. And the adjustment layer is going to have levels. And I'll put this on multiply. Wait a minute, let's see, I'm going to go into my levels, increase the darkness. So I'm going to make it very dark, change the blend mode to multiply. And then I'm going to put a elliptical mask in the middle. So I'm going to hold down the command key and then drag out. It's basically creating kind of a vignette. I'm going to invert the mask and then feather it quite a bit, soften those edges, and then reduce the opacity a little bit. Something like that. Okay, then I'm going to add in my type, True Detective. I'm going to do it all uppercase. I'll move it in. It has to be over far enough that his head doesn't run into it when he turns. Get it over here. I'm wondering if I go up to half, what'll make. Didn't change too much. Okay, so I've got True Detective over here, and then I think the background has to be a little bit darker so that it stands out more. So I can come into my background and solid settings, Command Shift Y. Make this a little bit darker. A little more neutral. I like that. And then I'll do a reveal on the type. using an effect called burn. So if we go into our effects and presets, just type in burn, and it's called actually burn film. If you double click on that, it adds the effect. We want to start out with the effect at 100 so that it's disappeared. And at the beginning, we'll make a keyframe. And let's take the center and click on this and then pull the center down to the center of my type. And I'll go over like 20 frames maybe, and then make this 0. And then I'm going to add a random seed. So this will reveal it more kind of random. And that's sort of it. But I'd like to also, I think, put maybe an outer glow on the pipe. So that's under stylize. There's a glow. I want the glow to be behind. I want it to be dark. I'm going to take this and go into the browns. And lower the threshold. I want to use, instead of original colors, I want to use my AB colors. There, now it's working. So that just helps my type stand out a little bit more.